the entire world, Miss Nikki Giovanni. I am humbled by that. There we go. That's lovely. Thank you so much. I wanted to, before I get myself wound up, or you never know what has you speaking to a lot of people, and we're speaking to a lot of people. I wanted to congratulate your basketball team and to continue to wish you. Well, yeah, you're in a rebuilding period. You really got a nice team. You got a nice coach, and. I thought I should mention that. Yeah, good luck. I teach at a school that we're like 1 and 30. We're not going to win anything this year unless we play the girls again. But no, it's very nice. And I want to congratulate Michigan for continuing to fight the good fight. It's really a sad. I mean, you should never start a speech like this. But you shouldn't. But it's really a sad day to watch this spectacle going on in Washington. And it is. And your heart just kind of breaks, or maybe yours doesn't, I don't know, mine does, for the president. Because if I had screwed Monica Lewinsky, I would lie about it. Totally embarrassing. Of course you would lie about it. Of course you would hope nobody knows. But we don't have that system of government. We don't have a system of government that the sex life of the head of state is somehow going to produce another head of state. It doesn't matter who Clinton screws. That's right. He was elected, he can be unelected or not, whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And we got this thing going for a president who tried to stand up for somebody, who tried to put America back to work. See, I remember, and it wasn't so long ago, the Bush and Reagan administration, people were in soup lines. I remember people freezing in public parks and everybody saying there's nothing we can do about it. I remember people screaming at kids like you, talking about you have to repay your college loan, as if the education was doing you any damn good, because it wasn't. There was no jobs out there for you. It wasn't. And everybody wants to tell you this is not about sex. This is about he lied. Everybody in this room, it's what I like about Jesus. It is, because I get so sick of the born-again Christians quoting the Old Testament to me. It's what I like about Jesus, because didn't he say something about he who was without sin casting the first stone? Isn't there something about forgiveness when all the guy did was what any other guy would do when some young woman comes along exposing herself? No, they tried to make Monica some kind of victim, but it doesn't hold up. And I'm not against Monica. She got what she wanted. She wanted to do a president. She got it. Well, most of us won't. You know, what opportunity do you and I have to do a president? So she gets to write her book. Maybe you're not interested to do the president. I always wanted to do a king. And no pun intended. No. No, you know, if you had a chance, you would do Charles, wouldn't you? Oh, I think he's so sexy. I do. And if somebody asked me, I would say, yeah, I definitely did the Crown Prince. But if somebody asked him, he would say, oh, no, I didn't do no old fat poet. This is the way these things go. I think America needs to go back to work. We're at the end of the 20th century. I think people need to get about their business. I was laughing earlier because, see, something's wrong. People don't know what to do with themselves. That's true. They don't have enough to do. In the old days, those same people would have gone out and lynched a few black people. They would have. Henry Howard and them standing around and said, "What you gonna do this weekend?" Henry said, "I think I'll go lynch a nigga," you know? And they would have been busy. That's what they would have done. It don't sound good, but that's the truth. And they would have had their weekend and they would have gone back to take care of the business. Now, of course, what they do is they say, "What you gonna do this weekend?" Henry said, "I think I'll go and beat up a gay person." Because that's what they're doing for entertainment. What's going on this weekend in Wyoming? Oh, we don't have nothing to do. Why don't we go see what gay guy we can get out and see if we can put him up against the fence? And you know why I'm mad at the black conservatives? Because those crazy Negroes run around talking about they're against gays as if they don't know gays are just a stand-in for Negroes. That's the truth. That's the truth. That's the truth. Anytime you bashing people's head in to the point that it's jelly, that they can't pick pieces of his skull out. That's what they did to you and me. What's the difference between dragging a black man behind a truck in Jasper, Texas, and beating a white boy to death because he's gay? And everybody wants to make that understandable, and it's not understandable. It's not understandable. It's not. And the black community needs to wake up because I'm sick of it. I'm sick of hearing about you scared where somebody's looking at you funny. You don't want to screw somebody gay, don't screw them. You don't have a right to take them out and kill them. You don't have a right to stand around and act like it's not your problem because it's all of our problems. What do we do to ourselves when we kill our children like this? Because we don't like it, and it is a preference. Because we don't like their sexual preference. They have a right to their sexual preference. If you don't like it, you have a right to say, "No, thank you, I don't want sex today." You don't have a right to kill them. No. You got to stand up for something. It's one thing that I do like about black people. I'm a big fan of black people because we're wonderful. I am. I like us a lot. I do like the fact that our ancestors brought us over this great divide. I do like the fact that anybody, I'm a big space freak. Some of you may know that, some of you may not. I really like space. If it's one thing I've always wanted to do, it's like just a space shuttle. Nothing big. You know, just go up and go around. I used to not be able to because I had a son. He was in school, then he was in college. You don't want to, freak out on your kid. He's trying to get tuition here. Mama's in space. You don't want to do, So I was I tried to be. I don't know. I tried to be a good mother. And I worked and I did things that you do. But now he's grown. He's out of law school. He has a job. So I can do space now. And no, I'm glad because you get sick. I mean, we like you all and stuff, but it's so nice when you graduate. We get to look nice and we watch you walk across the stage and then you're gone. Yeah. It's a good idea. It's good for you. It's good for us. Send flowers. Yeah, I think you should do that. I got mad at Thomas about that. I sent that kid through law school and through undergrad. And I thought I deserved a dozen flowers. I didn't care if he could afford it or not. He sent them to his girlfriend. So that's a quarrel we're having. I'll either get over it or not, but that's another situation. But send your mother some flowers. Say, "Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Pop. I really appreciate what you did," because we didn't have to do it. You may think that we were born to take care of you, but you're wrong. We got you as a result of another activity. We were not even anticipating you. But I think it would be nice, you know what I'm saying, to just do space. I've always wanted to just go up there and just go around and just sort of see what's going on. And when I look down on Earth, I don't know, I guess I'd get a modern view, but one of the things that I would be very interested in is that bigger view of what life is all about. I think to look back at the blue planet and look at the green on it, we would begin to know that something else has to happen. That's what I'm trying to say. Something else has to happen. To be a black American, we're talking about King here this morning. I like King because that speech didn't begin with, "I have a dream." He didn't dream until a long time. That speech was about, we are here to cash a check. Everybody wants to forget about that first part of the speech. We refuse to believe that America is morally bankrupt. You remember, speaking of sex, that J. Edgar Hoover of the FBI was trying to, no, you have to bring it up, was trying to blackmail King because he said, that Martin was running around on Coretta. That was between Martin and Coretta. And have nothing to do with the fact that America is racist. He sent Martin notes, you ought to kill yourself because we can expose you with women. But these were live women who were grown. If he could expose them with dead women who were underage, maybe there's a problem. But these were live women that were grown. Live men and live women have sex. And I'm glad that Martin didn't kill himself because of some crazy fool like J. Edgar Hoover, who really wasn't about anything other than trying to blackmail a man who was so much taller than he. It was a great day when, that's true, it was a great day when Hoover died. It was a wonderful, no, it was a wonderful day. It was a wonderful day because he was an evil son of a bitch. And for those of you, he was. He was. And for those of you who saw the movie Mississippi Burning, right? You saw it open on black FBI agents. See, this is where Hollywood has to pay for it. That's a lie. At the time of that movie, there were three FBI agents who were black. One was Hoover's chauffeur, one was Hoover's valet, and one was Hoover's lawn man. And that's a fact. There was no black FBI agent. Everybody wants you to think, oh, look at that. You look at Mississippi Burning, and you start to feel sorry. You start to feel like everybody was trying to help. Nobody was trying to help. The 60s were a hard period. The 60s started with a young man. His mother sent him down to Mississippi because she was worried about it. I like mothers because all of us, we go through a lot. Y'all gonna finish that at some point, I know, because it's in my eye. We go through a lot to have you. Her little boy, she was afraid. He's 14 years old. She didn't want to leave him on the streets in Chicago while she was out trying to work. She was worried. What would happen to little Emmett if I'm not there to look after him? She called her relatives in Mississippi. She said, can Emmett come down so he can spend the summer with you, so that he can be safe, so that I can go to work and not worry? And that little boy went down to Money, Mississippi with his relatives and went into a candy store, and it's in dispute. He either said goodbye, baby, or hey, baby, or something, but whatever it is, it's something he said. Nobody ever said he did anything. And some little crazy Negro went back to Milam, and that's what happened. It was some little crazy Negro said, what you gonna do about that boy from Chicago? And Mr. Milam said, what do you mean? He said, the way he talked to your wife. Because that little Negro thought it was funny. Some of y'all think things like that are funny. Little crazy Negroes like Armstrong Williams and them think it's funny. Crazier Negroes like Clarence Thomas think it's funny. And he said, what you mean? He said, that little boy, he talked smart. That night they came out to Moses' house. They said, we want the boy from Chicago. They didn't even know who they wanted. We want the boy from Chicago. That's where I give it to Emmett. Emmett got up and said, you want me? He knew what was going on. They said, we're going to take you out now. He said, I have to put my shoes on. That's undisputed. They said, you don't need to put your shoes on. He said, I don't go anyplace without my shoes. Emmett put his shoes on, and they beat him to a fare-thee-well. They fractured his skull, his eye. He was dead. They killed him. You could hear his cries all night long. Somebody, I have to say it, somebody heard his cries. But nobody came to help him. White men, realizing they had killed this child, and he was a child, put a fan, a 500-pound fan on him, put him in the river. And this is what you like about Jesus. They put him in the river to drown his body, and that 500-pound fan came back up. You have to like Jesus for that. What else is going to lift that fan? What else is going to bring that boy's body? His mother went. The sheriff said to her, what are you doing here? She said, I know it's my son. You know that the joke was that Till had gone to Detroit, that he was living in Detroit. They still try to say things like that. That's like the people that tell you the Holocaust didn't happen. You get sick of that kind of foolishness. That's like people that tell you the slaves were happy. You get sick of that. We had the trial of Emmett Till, and as you know, that was the first time white men were charged with the murder of a black boy. He was a boy. He was a little boy. It was in direct response to Brown versus Topeka. And I want to mention the woman who responded to Till. Her name was Rosa Parks. Everybody wants to say, oh, Rosa Parks' feet were tired. Everybody in this room got tired feet. That's the truth. Your butt's tired, your head's tired, something's tired. You don't start a movement because of that. Rosa's feet weren't tired, her soul was tired. And when that bus driver finally said to her for the last time, move, Mrs. Parks said, no, I'm not going to move today. Why do you pick on us? I'm not going to move. You remember Mrs. Parks was sitting on the aisle. You remember that. And for those of you who remember buses, the bus was full. There was a man. I'm not picking on the men on this, just there was a man sitting on the window. He said to her, let's give him the seat. She said, no, I'm not going to give up the seat. She got up, stood up to let him get out, and she sat back down. Bus driver said, make it easy on yourself. She said, I can't. I cannot. He said, I have to arrest you. She said, you have to do what you have to do, but I shall not be moved. What she said. There was a young minister, as you know, in Montgomery, Alabama, and when they called a mass meeting at the big church, they said, Dr. King, you're new to town. That's the truth. If he hadn't been, it'd been a whole nother question, wouldn't it? But they said, Dr. King, you're new to town, you haven't made any enemies yet. Would you speak? That's because people are scared. If I had a minute, could talk to all of you all right here. I know that some of you don't like the other of you because some of you think the other of you are better off. Some of you think you got better hair. Some of you think you got lighter skin. Whatever the hell it is, some of you think it's crazy. But people think like that, and I'm sorry. Because you ought to sit down. It's not enough of you here to not know each other. You ought to be sitting down together. Sure. Half the places around here sell you a keg. Buy yourself a keg and sit down every weekend and have the keg group. You ought to get to know each other because you're all you got. And if other people have their way, there'll be fewer and fewer of you here. So you may as well fight it out now. But Martin came and he spoke, and the world listened. He had a sweet voice. If he had been a singer, he would have been Leontine Price. That's the truth. If he had been a blues singer, he would have been, of course, the great Aretha Franklin. He had a sweet voice, and he tried to make sense of this madness. He said, we shall not be moved. People laughed about it, said, why don't you Negroes get on the bus? Don't you know it's a lot easier? And black people said, no, we think it's a lot easier to walk. We're going to walk. Now, you know what's funny to me? The bus company, I don't understand things like that. The bus company sued the Montgomery Improvement Association because they didn't want to ride segregated buses. Right, Sullivan, and then what kind of craziness is that? That's like you and me right now being put upon because we're trying to get equal access to the facilities. Everybody wants to know, how come you're doing that? We're doing that because we're American citizens. Have you heard? We've been here since 1619. Damn Pilgrims didn't come to 1620. We were here a year before, weren't we? It was black people sitting around. I know it was a black woman. I said, girl. I know it was, girl. You gonna stay? They're over in Jamestown. You know that. This is history. The first Jamestown settlement was lost because there's no black people around. Nobody even knows what happened to it. The second Jamestown settlement worked because black women sat around and said, Johnny, why don't you go out there and talk to them red people running in the trees, find out what they do. You know it's black women. Not that black men wouldn't have wanted to, but black men are not adventuresome like that. Black women always say, go talk to them. Find out what them things are, them gobble gobble things. Find out. You know it was. And you know the black woman cooked whatever it is that came. I was laughing the other day. How in the world did the black women figure out how to cook chitlins? How did that work? You know, some old slave master thought he was funny. Somebody said, you know, master, what you want to do with the innards? She said, take them to the black women. You can see the black women standing around. What you gonna do with that? So I guess I'll wash it. You know, she did. Somebody said, well, how long? I said, till it's clean. And you know, she went out and picked out things on the ground, picked out grasses and cooked it with it, and cooked it all day because she had to go to the fields and we had chitlins. Some of you crazy people don't eat no chitlins. Your mama did. It's why you're here. I'm not against other people. I'm just saying, be careful what you laugh at, because you don't know what you might need to do before you take care of your responsibilities. You don't know. You don't know. It's a serious thing. From the Montgomery Improvement Association, of course, the Southern Leadership Conference was started, and King did take on the mantle, as you know, of being a spokesperson. King did have questions about what we should do and how we should do it. I am of the generation that said it's time for direct action. I am 55 years old. I was getting ready to go to college when on February the 1st, 1960, 4 young men sat down in Greensboro, North Carolina. I have been wanting and waiting and hoping that one day the Alpha Kappa Phi Alpha fraternity will build a statue of those 4 young men, because they started the sit-in movement and they were right to do so. Somebody said, well, all your generation did was get a cup of coffee, but if that's all we did, then you can at least get a cup of coffee. I'm not gonna back down from what my generation did, because I think we did good. I went to Fisk University, where a young woman named Diane Nash said, we will take up the sit-in movement. And when the buses were burned in Anniston, Alabama, it was Diane that said, we will continue the freedom ride. And that kind of courage cannot be denied. My generation did the job in front of us. And your generation has a job. I have a tattoo, some of you know it. It's on this arm, it says Thug Life. And I have that tattoo for a young man of your generation, the first martyr of your generation, Tupac Shakur. Tupac was a great loss. There's no getting around it. It breaks my heart. He was not shot by random. He was not shot by accident. He was assassinated because of the power that that young man represented. He was not only beautiful, but he was brilliant. And he was not only beautiful and brilliant, he knew exactly what he wanted to do. The Tupac Shakur Foundation, he had already started. 23-year-old kid, had the money and the sense. And you remember that Tupac Shakur said, and it's true, I am the seed planted in stone. And that's what all of us are, aren't we? We are the seeds planted in stone, because if other people had their way, we wouldn't exist. Some of you will stand around and say things, I don't want affirmative action. I want to make it on my own. There is no own. Yes. There is no own. We belong to each other. We come together with each other. A part of you definitely is yours, and I'm going to recommend that you keep that part. Some little part of your head that you live in. James Baldwin called it a floor upon which you dance. There's a little bit of you that's a you that we don't know and we shouldn't know. You have a right to your privacy, but the rest of you belongs to us. And we stand on the shoulders of the people that came before. We stand on the shoulders of those people in 1619, and I laugh about them, but you know, they could have committed suicide. They could have jumped into the river. They could have tried to swim back to the Caribbean. They could have done that, but they decided they would live on, that they would see, in the words of the old blues song, what tomorrow brings. Tomorrow brought some heartache, but they lived on. And you and I live on, because we too want to know what tomorrow brings. You know, I'm a big fan of Christopher Columbus. I know that people have problems with Columbus, but I'm a mother and I don't. I just don't want you to think I'm stupid. I know that when you look at somebody like Christopher Columbus, or if you look at somebody, I knew Mama King and Daddy King. I didn't know Martin well. We were not friends. We knew each other well enough to say, Dr. King, how are you, Nikki? But I met his mother and I met his father. And that's where my heart goes. I know when I look at a young man, a kid, like a Christopher Columbus in Genoa, right? A poor community. I mention that because this is something you know. Little old poor community. You know his mother's worried about him. What is Columbus? 16 years old, 17 years old? He's not in school. What's he doing? Hanging out with bad friends. He is. And I know his mother said what any mother says. Son, you got to go somewhere. She didn't want nobody knocking on her door. Chris got me pregnant. She didn't want nobody knocking on her door. You know what I'm saying? Looking funny. Chris in. She didn't want that. She wanted something better for her son, and she was willing to lose him before she would let him dissolve in front of her eyes. He said, Mama, I can't do anything. She said, you got to do something, son. He said, well, all I know how to do is sail. She said, then, Christopher, you got to sail on. You got to do that. So he got himself a boat. It didn't take a whole lot. You know that. It didn't take a whole lot, and sailed on over to Spain because he had heard about Ferdinand and Isabel. They'd been fighting with the Moors, but it was clear that they were going to win. It was a great loss to Spain because all of the majesty of Spain, as you well know, was because they were conquered by North African Moors. But that's another discussion, isn't it? But he went on over to Isabel and Ferdinand. Isabel, you know, was a very impressionable young lady. She was just 12, 13 years old, which was almost middle age, but she was giggling all the time. I know we know enough about Italian men to know how attractive Columbus must be. Y'all laugh, but you know, it's very few who's going to turn down a good Italian guy. So we had that problem, didn't we? Ferdinand was upset because he knew he needed to marry Isabel to get his kingdom together. And you had this Italian boy who was hanging around her. So Ferdinand said, what does he want to go away? Somebody said, Ferdinand, he's talking about he can sail east to reach west if he had a couple of ships. He said, how many? He said, 3. He said, give it to him. So Columbus got his ships, and I like that. He got his ships, and he went back to the people he'd been drinking with on the port, on the deck side, going down to the wharfs. And he said, I got my ships. And he said that because, you know, a lot of people are talking about, Columbus, you ain't gonna get no ships. You always talk about sailing. You ain't going no place. He said, well, I got my ships. Who will join me? And you know, because you know people. Columbus think he's going around the world. He get out in that ocean and fall down. You heard that. You heard that when you tried to graduate from high school. I don't know what she want to graduate from high school from. She should be pregnant next year. You heard that. I don't know what makes him think he can go to Michigan, go to school. He'd be flunked out. He'd be back next year. You heard it because people are negative and crazy. And Columbus said, I got the ships. You can come or you can stay, but I'm sailing on. They got it loaded up, and people did because some people came along because they said, well, we can go because I know he'd be turning back soon. It's something to do. I'm not busy this week. They sailed on up, as you know, to the Canary Islands. And it really was sort of like Martin, wasn't it? When they finished, when he sailed on up to the Montgomery Improvement Association and they won the bus boycott, everybody said, now you're going back, aren't you? Now you go back and preach that same old gospel that you've been preaching, and nothing will have changed other than black people can get on the boats. And Martin said, no, I think I'll sail on. They got to the Canary Islands and they got fresh water. We all know about the necessity for fresh horses. And some people said, Columbus, you proved your point, man. You proved that you could leave. We're here in the middle of the ocean. Don't you see that there is nothing there? Now, as far as I know, Christopher Columbus was not a Baptist, but if he had been a Baptist, he would have said, if I perish, but I'm going to see the king. Christopher decided to sail on. You know, he had to strap his men to the mast when he got near the end of the horizon because they were convinced he was going to fall off the earth, but he would rather have fallen off the earth than to have turned around and said, I didn't make it where I was going. You and I know that he did not make it. He didn't go to the Spice Islands. He didn't even put his foot on the land we know to be the United States. We know that. But we also know he didn't sit back in Genoa and break his mother's heart. He said, I might not get to where I'm going, but I'm not going back to where I've been. And we applaud him for that as we applaud you for that. Christopher Columbus sailed on. Martin Luther King went on. And you, in this next century, you must continue to go on. You must continue whether the road is dark, whether you are confused. You must continue to try to go toward that horizon where you cannot see the end, where you do not know, here be dragons, maybe something will gobble you up. Certainly you have every right to be afraid. It is a vicious world out there. You got to be a fool not to be afraid of the people that we're all living with. There are some real crazy people out there. On a snowy, icy day, some fool goes 90 miles an hour. You got to be afraid of things like that. You got to be afraid of deciding, I don't want to work for IBM at $40,000 a year. I want to try something on my own. I want to do something else with my life. But it's your life, and you got to do something with it. You got to sail on. You might fall off the earth. Somebody might find the end of the earth. You might fall. But if you don't, you will have gone to a place that few people have seen. You will have found something new. King was murdered. He was assassinated. Maybe if he had known at the beginning where he would be at the end, maybe he would have said, I don't know if I want this burden. We did the same thing to Jesus too, didn't we? We don't like it when people come and tell us the truth about ourselves. Somebody says, shoot him down, get rid of him. And we do it today. Your president just mentioned what we talk about. We sit around. I wonder what Martin would have done. We don't have to wonder what Martin would have done because we know what Martin did do. And we know that whatever it is that he did do, somebody killed him. Somebody might kill all of us. It might happen. But we can't be cowards. We can't kowtow. We can't bend over because we're afraid of what somebody will say or what somebody will do. You and I have to sail on. At some point, there may be this wind that takes us up into this space that's unknown and unseen. We may find ourselves circling not just this planet, but this universe. We may never find a way back, but we were going to leave one day and not come back anyway. You must sail on. You are young, you are bright, the possibilities are there. All of you have the possibility to do something different and something better. There is a new world a-coming. There is a new sun a-shining. There are possibilities as yet unknown. You must sail on into this new century, and you must carry the rest of us with you. Thank you.
I've been asked to make some closing remarks, but I would like to reverse that because I don't think we should put closure to what Nikki Giovanni has just told us, but to let it be a beginning for us to move forward and heed the words that she has said, along with the words that Dr. King said, to try to make the world a much better place for all of us. So again, join me in thanking her for this wonderful, wonderful keynote address.